Hello, welcome to Make Away Life Coaching. My name is Sarah Abbott and I'm the life coach here. Okay, so this is our How We Love book series. If you didn't see the intro, then I just want to quickly recap. This book will change your life. I think it's the #1 book that every single person should read, and it is just absolutely amazing. So we are going to, in this series, we're just going to dip a toe into what the book has to teach us. You have to, if you really want to change your life, you have to get the book, you have to read the book, and understand it at a deeper level than we can possibly go into. It's so wise and so beautiful. So I hope you go to the show notes and figure out how to buy it. Go to your bookstore and order it, whatever you need to do. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the first imprint, which is avoiders. Okay, so in the book, the first imprint is actually called Secure Connectors, and I have to tell you, those are it's like the ideal of the people who are healed and blah, blah, blah. I've actually never met anyone like that, so I'm skipping that chapter. But if you want to read it, it's in the book. So the first imprint we're going to talk about is avoiders. Avoiders are my favorite people, and I used to think that was because I was very attracted to calm, steady people. But no, that's not it. So now I understand because of the book. My imprint is vacillator. Vacillators are really passionate, we're great people. But we are, what would the word, a nice way of saying it would be like emotionally erratic train wrecks half the time. So it's like, roller coaster all day long. And so when the vacillator meets the avoider, and the avoider is like calm and steady, it's like the angels are singing, and I mean the vacillator feels like they finally met the dependable, steady person, in my case, man or friend, whoever, that we've always dreamed of. Like, this person's always around. They're always there for us. It's like meeting all these needs. I always tell Nick, my husband, that he is my rock, and it is true, and I love that so much about him. It's so great. But boy, do they have a dark side. And the dark side is that they are really pretty terrible at connection, which some of us need more of than others. I need a lot. So anyway, it's good and bad. All of the imprints in this beautiful book have good traits and bad traits. It's just how we are as humans. In case you didn't see the introductory video, I just want to give you a brief excerpt from the book that kind of explains this idea of how your imprint from your childhood of how you love translates into your adult life and your marriage. This is the wife writing. Okay. Milan and I spent the first 14 years of our marriage trying to change our destructive patterns, but we were only addressing the obvious issues that constantly surfaced. We listed the problems and we searched for solutions. After 14 years, though, a huge change took place when we discovered the unseen forces that determined how we loved. We realized our lessons in love didn't start in marriage, they started in infancy and lasted all the years that we lived with our parents. Our experiences growing up, good and bad, left a lasting imprint in our souls that determined our beliefs and expectations about how to give love and receive love. Milan and I had different lessons about love, which resulted in different imprints, and without realizing it, we were dancing to different tunes. No wonder we were stepping on each other's toes. Lasting change became possible when we made that revolutionary discovery. So, how does an avoider become an avoider? Oh my gosh, there's a whole chapter. I hope you read it. It's so good. But here's a brief summary. Avoiders are imprinted to be hyper-independent. So let me read one more excerpt from the book. It's the last one for today, so that you can understand how they might become imprinted to be hyper-independent. When people are imprinted to be hyper-independent, they have what we call an avoider love style. What do they avoid? They avoid vulnerability, emotions, neediness, honest reflection that brings self-awareness, you name it. When avoiders were children, their parents were unable to tune in to their feelings, and as a result, their emotional life is underdeveloped. Receiving limited physical affection and emotional connection from their parents, they rid themselves of the anxiety of wanting but not having by restricting their feelings and limiting their need for others. It's no wonder that their answer to life is self-sufficiency. Also, if asked about their childhood experiences, the avoiders may say, "It was fine," or "My parents taught me a lot." When pressed for details, avoiders don't have a lot of specific memories about their childhood. Okay, here's some cheats about how you may find out if you're an avoider or if you're married to an avoider or if you're raising an avoider. How was your day? Fine. How's your marriage? Fine. How's your childhood? Fine. If you say fine a lot, you may be an avoider. So, a common problem in an avoider's life, or if you're married to an avoider, is connection. Avoiders really avoid connection almost all the time and at all costs. That's how they were raised. And so it becomes a big problem depending on who they're married to. So, here's how you can tell if you're an avoider. If the people who love you, like your spouse is a good indicator, are always angry with you because you're emotionally distant or physically distant, or they call you a workaholic because you'd rather be at work than home connecting with people, then you may be an avoider. If the resentment inside of you is like, why is my wife or my husband never satisfied? Why can't they take care of their own needs? Well, that's a question an avoider would ask. So if you're wondering those things, you might be an avoider. Okay, so what might have been the childhood of an avoider? Well, obviously there's a lot of different kind of home situations that can leave the avoider imprint, but a really common one that they talk about in the book is that the parents of an avoider find the child's emotions very overwhelming or irritating. And so because of this, they feel overwhelmed or irritated. They basically teach the child to, like, don't cause a scene, don't have needs. Just basically the kid kind of has to go on autopilot and not show a lot of emotional neediness, not need a lot of connection. And a lot of times there's kind of like, they're shamed if they try to do that. So the kids adapt, man, they're excellent adapters. And so they adapt to this situation and they learn not to have needs, and they learn that people don't really want to connect. So there's no point in trying. They pick up some subliminal messaging about the fact that emotional connection is often overwhelming and irritating because that's how their parents feel. And so the cycle continues. And a lot of avoiders, when they think about being a child, they realize once they've done the work that they kind of felt really empty a lot of the time. So if you felt that way in your childhood, you might be an avoider. My therapist would give me this great visual, which we will put in the show notes. If you've ever been in the Midwest and you've seen those grain silos, it's like silo, silo, silo. Well, that's kind of like what it feels like to grow up in an avoider home. It's like mom's this silo, dad's this silo, child is this silo, maybe sibling is this silo, but there's no connection. There's like this big gap between all of them. And that's how you have to live your life. And it's a kind of empty feeling for a child. Okay, so if you're an adult avoider, what might that feel like? Again, big range, but here's some common things that happen. Adult avoiders often have a really strong feeling that they're disconnected or they're lonely. So if loneliness is a big issue for you, you might be an avoider. Adult avoiders often kind of feel a lack of vitality. They feel like they're going through life in a mid-range existence, like Goldilocks, never too hot and never too cold, but just kind of stuck in the middle. Adult avoiders often feel, again, in this mid-range, stuck in this mid-range. They never get too excited about anything. They also never feel too dejected about anything, but also feel kind of bored and stuck in the middle. Another really common thing, depending on who you're married to or in a relationship with, is that the avoider often feels smothered by their partner, and they feel that their partner's never satisfied. So if you feel that way, you may be an avoider. Okay, now we're going to move forward. Like I said in the book, the next section of the book, which we're going to get into later, talks a little bit about the marriages and what they might be like. But I'm going to talk about it even though maybe you need to just go read the chapter. But if you're an avoider married to a vacillator, then what you often feel in your marriage, like I said, is you feel kind of smothered and like your spouse is never happy. And your spouse may say about you that you are disconnected and emotionally unavailable, and that there is a lack of a spark in your marriage. There's another imprint called a pleaser, and if you are an avoider and you're married to a pleaser, then what you're hearing from your spouse is that they often feel rejected and ignored. Or lastly, you might be an avoider married to another avoider. Okay, so here's what that might look like. Y'all think you're doing so hot. You know why? Because we never argue. People ask you, how's your marriage? Fine. You both say fine because you're both avoiders, okay? So you think that that's all great because you never fight. That's like how you have no conflict. That's how you determine that you're in a good relationship. But then something hard happens in life. In this life, there will be troubles. That's a Bible verse. So something hard happens, and conflict is kind of thrust upon you because whatever you're going through is creating conflict. And now that you're stuck in the conflict and you can't get out of it, you realize neither of you are comfortable with conflict and you really don't know how to handle it, and you both shut down instead of dealing with it. But again, you're stuck with it. So it's like this really hard situation, and that's kind of how you know you're married to an avoider. Is like you're both avoiders, and then what happens during this hard time is you both realize that the other person is not able to comfort you or connect with you through this hard time. So then there's kind of loneliness on both sides. Okay, so if any of this resonates with you, or you think your spouse might be an avoider, then buy the book. That's in the show notes. You can go buy the book. Okay, it's easy to find. Then read chapter 1, which is just the introduction to the book. Then read chapter 5, which is the avoider chapter. Then if you're like, holy smokes, this is totally me, or this is totally my spouse, that's exciting. Then go forward and treat yourself to chapters 10, 13, or 14, because that's the marriage imprints. Whether they're married to an avoider, pleaser, or another avoider, that chapter will blow your mind about how accurate it is about your own marriage, believe me, okay? So take the test in the book, read chapter 1, then 5, then if you want, 10, 13, 14, and that will give you like, I don't know, so much reflection. It'll be unbelievable. Your whole life's gonna start to change. Now, for some awkward self-disclosure from me, the life coach here at Makeaway Life Coaching. I'm a vacillator, like I told you. My husband's an avoider, like I told you. So there's a whole chapter on our marriage, and when we read it, I made him read it. Okay, so we were totally into the chapter. It was like revolutionary. And basically what I want to share with you is that just using this book alone, our marriage changed about 1,000,000%. It is such a phenomenal transformation. Here's what happened. Nick, my sweet, wonderful husband, has really learned how to better respond to my attempts to connect with him. And he's learned to interpret those as a way to be close with me, instead of me being smothering. Though that's really good. He's also learned to tolerate vacillators, are hotheads, and he hates conflict because he's an avoider. So what he's learned to do is take my kind of frequent little outbursts of frustration or anger in stride and realize that if he just kind of lets it roll off his back, which avoiders are really good at, then it kind of goes away on its own. Here's what's so miraculous about that. Him being able to tolerate my little like freakouts has reduced my freakouts and my little bursts of anger and frustration by about 10,000,000%. So that's really, really good news. And here's the thing, I'm a vacillator. Vacillators have abandonment issues. So my work in our relationship has been for me to realize that when he needs space, it's not a rejection of me. It doesn't mean he's abandoning me. It just means he needs to take a little break from what is a very intense connection with me all the time. And I'm not always so good at that, but I try really, really hard, which is all the vacillator can do. And then here's the bonus. Here's why vacillators and avoiders marry each other 80% of the time. It's the most predictable pairing, actually, is when Nick met me, he never felt so alive. That's what he said. And when I met him, I never felt so secure. So you can see why there's strengths and there's challenges to all of these pairings. For us, we have done the work that this book has in the workbook. We did that workbook too. And it has just absolutely transformed our marriage, and I'm so, so grateful. So cool. So thanks for coming by today, and I hope you join us next week on Thursday. We will be dropping an episode about the pleaser. Pleasers are super hard for me, but I'm going to do my best to just lay it out without judgment, okay? I'll see you then. Thanks.